Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Bridget Ebert, and today I, along with Arisha Arvat and Ariel Cox, will be telling you about the modern danger. But before we explain to you all about the modern danger, I first want to share a story with you. I remember clearly the morning of my 13th birthday. I walked downstairs to the smells of pancakes being cooked on the griddle and bacon sizzling in a pan. I noticed bright streamers and balloons displayed all around the room, but my mind was focused on one thing only. Then I saw it. Sitting on the table was a box perfectly wrapped in pink paper. There was only one thing that I truly wanted for my birthday, and it was something that I had been begging for years, my very own phone. After much anticipation, my family was finally ready to watch me open the gift that I had been glancing at all morning long. Within moments, my dream was realized as the torn paper revealed my very first iPhone. While my experience getting my first phone was very exciting, I know that it was not unique because I have no doubt that everyone listening to this speech today could share a similar story of the exhilarating feeling of getting their first phone. Every year, thousands of kids around the world receive their first phone. It is one of humanity's most precious possessions. There are many who would say that handing a child a phone is not that big of a deal. However, there are many who would argue that because children are not fully developed physically, mentally, or emotionally, children under the age of 16 should not have a phone because it can affect a child's behavior and attitudes, and through access to social media and other platforms, it can greatly impact a child's mindset. According to the National Library of Medicine, statistics show that on average, kids under the age of 8 spend 2.5 hours on screens every day. Kids between the ages of 8 and 10 spend 6 hours on screens every day, and kids between the ages of 11 and 14 spend 9 hours on screens every day. So the question one must ask is, does this matter? Well, there are many experts in the field of child development that have done thorough research on how phones can affect a child's physical brain development. According to an article by the National Institute of Drug Abuse called Can Too Much Screen Time Harm You? It says that too much screen time may cause physical changes in your brain. Studies show that kids who spent more than 7 hours on screens a day had a thinner cortex than those who used screens less. The cortex, as many know, is the outer layer of the brain that processes information. If a child's cortex slowly becomes thinner than it should be due to excess screen time, his ability to understand and take in new information will progressively become more difficult. It is clear that when a child spends too much time on screens, it can indeed negatively affect his brain. In addition, studies show that spending too much time on screens can also affect visual brain growth. According to the Potsdam State University, in an article titled, What Does Screen Time Do to My Brain? It says that screen time overloads the sensory system, fractures attention, and depletes mental reserves. This can especially be damaging to a child's brain development, as damaging the sensory system can result in double vision, disorders of pupils, or even complete vision loss. Even though having screen time is very fun and exciting for kids, their overall physical and visual brain health and development will be much better off without it. Furthermore, studies show that just as some people have intense addictions to drugs, spending too much time on screens can result in similar addictions. According to the Premier Health website, in an article titled Screen Addictions Can Affect Physical and Mental Health, it says that just like tobacco and alcohol use, screen time can become an addiction that damages your health. In addition, screen use releases dopamine in the brain, which can negatively affect impulse control. When dopamine is released in the brain, addictions only become stronger. And while with time, this addiction is something that could be handled by an adult, the result of developing such an addiction could be very detrimental to a young child. It is clear that when a child is given too much access to screens, it can delay his brain growth physically and visually, and it can even begin to form addictions. And again, while having screen time is very fun and exciting for kids, due to these negative possibilities, it is probably best that kids are not given phones at such a young age. And now that I've told you all about how phones can affect a child's brain development, now Arisha is going to explain how phones can affect a child's behavior and attitudes.
Thank you, Bridget. After understanding how child development works, we can look at some pros and cons of a child actually having a phone on their own. One of the two possible results noticed is social interactions. Children who have a cell phone have the ability to contact their friends and when they're not around or live far away. Children's Play ELC states that socializing allows kids to build skills that help them be confident and outmost later in their life. Social interactions help children to develop their self esteem and build resilience towards their unknown, and in turn, create connections that make new social interactions less scary. The second reason is for children to have an unbalanced communication with their parents and guardians, the ability to reach in case of emergencies and opportunities to develop reasonable technology use. Though most children would say that having a phone in their age is necessary, adults will argue this, saying that technology is the modern day danger. Adults notice that children or even young teenagers do not know how to control their screen time, turning into addicts. Overuse of cell phones can act as a barrier to quality interactions and conversations, leading to decreased satisfaction in their relationship with others and life in general. Executive device can lead to feelings of being disconnected when they spend time with their friends or family, which also leads to concentration and learning issues. Adding on to that, a scholarly source by PubMed Central states that high portions of youth engage in heavy smartphone use and media multitasking, with results of chronic sleep deprivation and negative effects on cognitive control, academic performances, and social emotional functioning. Digging deeper into this type of topic, significant hormonal shifts occur during puberty that affect teenagers' mood. As teenagers mature, they commonly experience increased irritability, intense sadness, and frequent frustration from these chemical changes. And adding a phone to this would only make the situation worse. Another scholarly source supports this by stating the duration of mobile RF exposure significantly affects the plasma levels of hormones. We also showed that the mobile RF can alter some morphometric and structural parameters of adrenal glands. As mentioned briefly, children's use of cell phones can also affect their relationship with their parents. Economic Times states that the study notes that 87% of children believe that not having a smartphone makes them feel inferior, while 87% accepts they talk to their parents rudely while using a smartphone because they get annoyed. Of course, this all can easily be inferred considering we just talked about hormones playing an interesting role in this. For many Americans, 16 is probably the most important birthday they'll celebrate before they reach legal adulthood. At least it was so for me when I moved here. At 16, a young person can get a driver's license, a job, and more importantly, they can enjoy the freedom and be expected to cope with the responsibilities that come with both. For these reasons, we believe that 16 is a reasonable age for a child to receive a phone as well. I mean, if the government thinks they're old enough to drive, they're old enough and mature enough to make their own decisions in these type of things. Adding on to that, having a phone that is a need to communicate with their parents, friends for group projects, colleagues for work, and GPS for directions is quite necessary. Though let's not forget that the main reason why everyone wants a phone is social media, which is a super dangerous topic that cannot be ignored. Ariel, why don't you tell us a little more on what you and other specialists think on this topic?
Thank you, Arisha. Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel, and today I will be closing on the risks of our young adolescents and their use of social media. Social media is like a whole other world right at our fingertips, and the risks of even adults becoming addicted to the endless scrolling into the rabbit hole are extremely high. A peer-reviewed article published by JAMA Psychiatry on associations between time spent using social media and internalizing and externalizing problems among U.S. youth states. This study says this suggests that increased time spent on social media may be a risk factor for internalizing problems in adolescents, and future research should determine whether setting limits on daily social media use, increasing media literacy, and redesigning social media platforms are effective means of reducing the burden of mental health problems in this population. There have been numerous studies within the psychiatric and psychology fields on the dangers of social media use, especially at such young ages. Dr. Rodolfo Olive, who is an expert in media psychology and has written many peer-reviewed academic studies on the impact of social media in general, says an extensive and international body of research, which includes several longitudinal and experimental examinations, consistently shows that social media use increases anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, life dissatisfaction, and psychological distress. Guys, knowing this and how fragile and extremely impressionable young minds are just another reason kids shouldn't be on social media at such a young age. More and more people are having trouble differentiating between real life and the social media world. They are sucked into posting just to post for validation and not being able to talk in real life. More and more, okay, sorry. Some concerns that some might have on young adolescents and social media are as follows: self-esteem issues, poor eating and sleeping habits, use of drugs, criminal behavior, harmful bias. And that is just to touch on a few. I am a mom of two littles. What are my thoughts as whether I'm going to let my kids on social media? I don't want to be that strict, and some might say weird parent, but no. If I have a say over it, I think let kids be kids. So one might be wondering, what age is appropriate for social media use? And that's a great question. Upon research on this topic, there isn't a safe set age that we could pinpoint is good, but there is research on precautions that can be put in place to better protect our children's minds. And I believe it should be of the utmost importance to spread the message to parents and teens about the healthy versus unhealthy use of social media. Kathy Catella, who specializes in health and medicine, wrote, "The excessive use of social media can harm teens by disrupting important healthy behaviors. Some researchers think that exposure to social media can overstimulate the brain's reward center, and when the stimulation becomes excessive, it can trigger pathways comparable to addiction. We need precautions put in place for our young youth. And a few of those precautions that we as a society should advocate for are: one, regulate the usage and monitoring our children's platforms, advocating for the companies of the social media platforms to enforce stricter age verification precautions, and they should even put stronger regulations in place to removing suicidal and violent posts. Again, these are just to name a few, but in hindsight, it's not the solve all to the problem. The risks are still going to be there, and unless we shelter our children, it's inevitable that they will find themselves on one of these platforms. You might be thinking, is it actually that bad? Aren't there some positives to having social media access? Yes, I mean, there are some positives to having social media platforms. Jason Kelly, an activism director, wrote in March, the American Psychological Association, APA, released a health advisory on social media use. In it, the APA makes clear using social media is not inherently beneficial or harmful to young people. Rather, the effects of social media, okay, sorry. The effects of social media depend on multiple factors, in particular, teens' pre-existing strengths or vulnerabilities and the context in which they grow up. This view is backed by science. It's also common sense. Social media reflects society, he says. It has dark corners, but also bright spots like educational resources, vibrant, uplifting communities, and places where people can stand up for what they believe in. From fighting racism to pushing for stronger gun laws, nearly 5 billion people use it to connect and share ideas. So it would be absurd to claim that this complex landscape is inherently good or bad for anyone, Kelly says. Food for thought on that quote, guys. It really comes down to the parents and or individual child. If parents see that their adolescent seems more on the wild side, maybe social media access should wait, or it could help them connect and find that happy place that they might have been yearning for or missing. Many of you might be thinking, what does she want us to think? Give our children access or don't? My personal but not expert opinion is wait. The young growing minds of our children will have a lifetime of social media and phone use. The cliche kids should be kids rings true in many instances, but this one in particular, it can wait. One thing that I do know is that social media is ever changing and growing, and it isn't going anywhere anytime soon. All in all, having access to a phone with a world of web browsing and social media at our children's fingertips will always be a risk. Do your research. Be sure to put that thinking cap on and pull it down tight. It's a big world out there, and our kids need safe guidance. At the end of the day, we need to fight for our future generations' well-being and safety, and I believe that starts right at home with monitoring the use of our kids' social platforms. Thank you.